Bishop McAlilly, board members, staff, and friends, it's good to be together for our spring board meeting. Bishop McAlilly estimates about 300 board meetings, and I say, who's counting? Perhaps posterity is counting. Thank you all for your commitment to our church and our common work. Your time, your talent, your guidance are invaluable to us. Many of you traveled very long distances to be here with us, and we're grateful. Would you look a minute at this sculpture? This sculpture is Jacob Epstein's sculpture of Jacob wrestling with the angel. I believe that it's probably Jacob Epstein's picture of himself, Jacob, wrestling with the angel. Do the next picture. This is a close-up of the piece. This powerful piece is in the Tate Britain Museum in London. I saw it last summer on my sabbatical. You can see the power of the angel and the exhaustion of Jacob. I think, show the full-length picture again, please. I think that you can see that the angel is almost bearing the complete weight of Jacob. And their faces are so close together, they're probably sharing each other's breath. I felt a deep resonance with this piece when I saw it in July, and I feel it still. We at GBHEM are feeling the turbulence and anxiety of our denomination. We are all asked, what do you think will happen? We are all asked, do you think the agencies will survive? We ask ourselves, do we have a future? Some of us ask, will I have a job? My answer is, I don't know what will happen. My answer is, I don't have a crystal ball. I do know, never waste a crisis.
Amen.
We must change because the church is changing. We must anticipate rather than react. I look at Jacob and the angel. The angel is holding Jacob's entire weight. The angel is powerful. And the angel holds Jacob close as one beloved. Jacob is overmatched. Jacob is held. Jacob survives. Jacob is blessed. And Jacob is changed. His name is changed from Jacob. The Hebrew means he grasped the heel because he was the second born. He was a twin, and Esau was born first, and he grasped the heel of Esau. His name was Jacob. His name was changed from Grabby to Israel, he who struggles with God. And for the Hebrew people, a name change means a changed nature. All this is God's work. Our work is to continue to wrestle. And we know there is blessing in the struggle. We are navigating the turbulence of change and uncertainty as we are faithful to God and the work the United Methodist Church has called us to do. You have asked us to get ahead of the changing landscape using the ROI research process. With your permission, we fully engaged in the ROI, Return on Investment Process survey, and we've learned a great deal. We received a preliminary report, and with the leadership team, Jack and Patty Phillips spent 3 days with us as they walked us through the process, of the assumptions of the process and their findings. They asked the worldwide United Methodist Church, literally thousands of people in many different roles, what is the impact of GBHEM from where you stand? How do you access resources? What are the key competencies our leaders need today? What are the key competencies our leaders need tomorrow? As a percentage, how much has your engagement with GBHEM improved your performance as a leader? The answer was 44% improvement. They also asked if there was a service that could connect you with leadership development resources based on your need, how likely is it that you would use it? And 75% answered likely or extremely likely. The other intriguing questions were, of the following competencies, rate their importance for the present and for the future. In other words, what kind of leaders do we need in the future? And I know it's kind of hard to see, and all of these slides will be put onboard, so downloaded on onboard so you'll have them. I think you can see the ones in red are the ones that received the most hits, that were perceived as the most important. And you can start seeing accountability, authenticity, adaptive leadership. The ones that are marked in red received the most hits, were perceived as the most important qualities. We have many other interesting questions to explore in our learnings around the ROI data. Ray and Ginger will be going into more depth around this in a few minutes. Some of the comments were very interesting. One of the research participants said, quote, "The United Methodist Church is on the brink of schism, at least 5 decades of steady decline. Characteristics we cannot live without: emotional intelligence, agility as a leader, spiritual and theological health, devotional life that is rich and deep, basic skills like how to run a church, think critically, and how to engage in conversations with non-Christians." I think this is very perceptive. I think we have greater clarity around what the church is asking us for in terms of producing leaders. We have named this process the ecology of call in an effort to describe the journey from a child to service from Medina, Tennessee, mature principal Christian leader to retirement, this entire ecology of call to persons who see the world as their parish. The church needs diverse leaders who are deeply rooted in the things of God, able to navigate change, handle turbulence, and overcome social distance. Also, we learned it's important to be connected to the United Methodist community as they mentor others. This is our job, to be the balcony view for the denomination's leadership formation and development, and then resource our denominational leadership process with the end in mind. I see our role as on the balcony for the entire denomination, keeping the church connected in diversity as we hold the tension between connectional and contextual. We must provide the nexus of a normative, formative, restorative, and transformative leadership process for the global United Methodist Church. How do we help Anna Santaniello from Medina, Tennessee, answer her call to be a missionary in Rio Bravo, Mexico? Currently, we learned that many see us as primarily regulatory or a normative agency, such as helping boards of ordained ministry manage the licensing process, candidacy, or even the role of the university senate, keeping educational standards in place. We must continue this regulatory work, but we don't necessarily have to do it the way we've always done it. Increasingly, the church is asking us to provide guidance for formation, formative, restorative, and transformative process. Formative means building competencies. Restorative means recharging energies. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And transformative, exercising adaptive leadership. This requires resilience and innovation on our part, and confirms our decision to look ahead to the leadership needed in 2030 and 2050 for the people called Methodists. It's also clear to us that this shift means we will use the ROI across the agency in how we decide what outcomes are appropriate for these big strategic goals. If what we are currently doing is not done with the end in mind, what will we do differently or stop doing? We have had several ahas. The one that I think is most apparent is that we have greatly overestimated the capacity to change people with more information. Leaders are asking for peer-to-peer learning as they encounter challenges others in their role have experienced. We need to move from program to process while keeping the normative essentials in place. The Global United Methodist Church needs GBHEM to network from the balcony to hold the tensions between structure and freedom, connectional and contextual, support and accountability, memory and imagination. We must change to meet the changing needs of the church, and we are. This is the slide that shows our path for the way ahead. We have done the analysis. I have a copy, handy-dandy copy here. We have worked on the analysis through the ROI. We are putting together the strategic assessment that what we have learned from the ROI to shape a strategy around that, analysis of the current church efforts, what we're currently doing, looking at the church, what the church is asking us for in the future. How do we train our staff to meet their changing roles, changing needs of the church in terms of leadership? And we brought in the DVL group to help us communicate internally and externally our mission and message. So this process is continual. You're never done with this. But this is a map for our territory of how we see our work and the structure of the way ahead. So we have changed our process in light of what we have learned from ROI. We took what we learned from the ROI and as a leadership table, which includes the cabinet and the program staff, said, what did you learn? And how are you going to implement what you learned? What are the gaps between the present and the future? And then prepare a training plan for our staff to learn the competencies that we need to be for a resource for leadership. Each of the areas, DOM, DHE, administration, and global education, then set short-term goals, short-term wins, and are working together on long-term strategy. Ray will be bringing an update on strategy, and Ginger will be sharing more of the nuts and bolts of the ROI findings. I introduced the DVL staff. They will be, after Ray and Ginger, they will be sharing an update on our branding study. Right now, Anna, I want you to come and share what she shared at the Project Transformation Tennessee banquet last week. Some of you might remember that GBHEM gave a significant grant out of our U.S.-based Young Clergy Initiative in 2012 to take project transformation to a national level. And when I heard Anna speak, I knew that she needed to speak to us today for two reasons. I wanted you to hear her story and get a living, breathing example of the leaders God is calling forth now, and to show you the impact we're looking for. We need thousands more Annas. Anna, please come. We hear you gladly.
Good morning. Good morning. There's a long list of holies you may be familiar with. There's the Holy Bible, the Holy Spirit, and we'll soon be entering Holy Week. But today, I'd like to offer a new one to your list of holies. Holy crap. Those are the words I told myself at the close of day one of my year-long Project Transformation internship in 2016. Holy crap. This is not what I expected. How am I going to make it through these next 3 months and then another 9-month fellowship? Holy crap. I was 22 at the time and had no idea what I was getting myself into. A little background about me. I come from a West Tennessee town called Medina. Population 3,479, and mostly white. I lived there all of my life until heading to college at UT Martin. Coming from this very small town, I always dreamed of being a missionary someday, to travel thousands of miles to another country to help others. That's what I wanted to do after graduating. Work as hard as I can to make others' lives better. But my pastor knew me well enough to know that I wasn't ready to be an international missionary quite yet. I didn't know anything about building relationships with people who were different from me, and I was unsure about my own identities and gifts. I was struggling to navigate my own emotions, so I needed some type of life bridge that would take me from Medina to Mexico. He told me about Project Transformation and encouraged me to look into it. And he was right. When I got to PT, it didn't take me long to realize it wasn't at all like the summer camp that my brother and I used to go to. It wasn't just another summer job that would end neatly every day at 5 o'clock. It also wasn't at all like the short-term mission trips I had been on, those that jumped from one task to the next in order to help people who I really didn't know beyond an introduction. Although important, these experiences did not require me to build real relationships or to wrestle with my own story, my own privilege, and my own brokenness. Project Transformation, on the other hand, did. Here, I couldn't just show up and serve, checking my own identity, emotions, and vulnerabilities at the door. No, these kids saw right through that. They wanted more. They didn't need a babysitter or a facilitator to fill the time and space. They wanted me to show up, to be real, to share my own story. Their summer experience at Project Transformation really mattered to them and to their families. And gradually, it started to matter to me too. I realized that in order for me to make an impact, to be a strong mentor for them, I was going to have to dig in my heels and invest in myself. This realization hit me hard. To be honest, I kind of panicked. I realized that I was entering new territory. I was going to have to let down my walls of perfection, and I was going to have to lift the veil and acknowledge that I didn't have it together. Day by day, my reason for doing PT began to change. I started to realize that I wasn't there just to do for the children. I was there to be with them, to be present, to be in relationship. PT exposed me to a completely different way of giving love and care. It's a very raw and pure kind of love where we give children permission to feel whatever they feel. It's okay to be who you are. It's okay to be you. You are enough. It's in that culture of honesty and transparency that I began to look inward at my own story, my own baggage. In sharing that story today, I need to disclose to you that I was also dealing with a very traumatic personal experience in my life. And while I'm not comfortable talking about it yet, suffice it to say that it sent me to a very dark place at one point. A place where I was questioning everything in my life, including my dream of being a missionary. The questions I was asking were big, and the voices inside my head were loud. They would say over and over, "Anna, you're not equipped for this work. You can't do this. You're not good enough." One of the questions I was grappling with most, am I wanting to be a missionary for the right reason, or just to escape from dealing with my own brokenness? Thankfully, my PT family did not give up on me as I sought to deal with the painful emotions I was feeling. They were present with me. I can remember sitting in my supervisor's office and saying over and over, "I don't know if I'm enough for this work." I thought, who am I in this moment to give these kids love and compassion when I need it so desperately myself? She would then put things back into perspective. She would listen with an empathetic heart. She showed compassion, and most of all, she believed in me. My fellow interns were there for me too. They were encouraging. They didn't leave or run away. They were good friends to me when I couldn't be a good friend to them. Whenever I started to question myself, their counter message to me, "You can do this. Anna, you are enough." See, that's the secret that PT doesn't tell you when you start your internship. The ministry is about God's transformational love, and you think you're coming here to work with God to transform the lives of children, and that's true. It happens all the time. But then, little by little, you realize that you are the one that's being transformed. You are the one who's being ministered to. These children, the volunteers, the experience of living in intentional Christian community with other interns, it changes you forever. At my PT site, the children, the site pastors, and my fellow interns, we would have big laughs together. We would laugh at all of the funny things our kids would say and do. The children would get tickled at me all the time and say, "Miss Anna, why are you acting so silly?" This time felt simple and pure and honest. It was healing for me. We were all ministering to each other. I want to give you an example. Kenny was 5 years old, but he couldn't write his name when he came to our after-school program in the fall of 2016. He couldn't even hold a pencil. He had no confidence in anything that had to do with school. So one day I noticed Kenny was upset about doing some homework. We were learning to write his letters. I sat down beside him and I said, "What's going on, buddy?" He said, "Miss Anna, I'm just not good enough to write my ABCs." Suddenly, I could relate. I said, "Kenny, there are days when Miss Anna doesn't feel good enough either, and that's when my friends encourage me and help me to try. I'm here with you now, and I know that you can do this." After that, I began to see a change in Kenny as he worked on his letters. A became B, B quickly became C. Slowly but surely, Kenny began to write a new story for himself. His enthusiasm grew, and he kept coming back to PT. He got more comfortable and began to connect with several of our volunteers. They were big encouragers for him. And talk about transformation, Eventually, Kenny was the one going around saying to the other kids, "You can do this. You are enough." Seeing a transformation like that stays with you. It becomes a part of you, and it becomes part of your story. You start to see how God can take something that feels pretty crappy and turn it into something more, something that's joyful, hopeful, and even powerful, something that's holy. Honestly, I think if PT hadn't come in my life when it did, I would have drowned in my own brokenness, my own fear of being vulnerable, and I don't think I could have risen above it. But today, I'm a missionary in Mexico through the United Methodist Church. I'm teaching English to children and building real relationships with them, and it's powerful. Before PT, I thought my call was to go and do. But with Project Transformation, my call is to be present with, to be with people who are struggling, who are marginalized, and who are dealing with some pretty crappy systems. That's now what I call the holy crap. I'm not sure we're all as inclined to invite God to transform our lives when things are going super well, when life is all sunshine and problem-free. But when crap happens and when things get messy, when we find ourselves walking through a dark valley, when we start to question whether we're good enough, God can work with that if we let God. That's when it becomes holy crap. Thanks be to God for using Project Transformation as the platform for me to hear my call to ministry. Thanks be to God for the children, the young adults, the volunteers, you all, and staff for speaking truth to me, for sitting with me in both darkness and light. And thanks be to God for taking my holy crap and turning it into something beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. We're all inspired by your witness and proud of your service. Anna is serving in Rio Bravo, Mexico, which is about 10 miles from where I grew up. So makes me proud. Thank you. I thought it would be important for us to hear today the impact that one of our Young Clergy Initiative projects has made on Anna and the impact that she will be making in the world. Bishop, this is my report.
Thank you, Dr. Kate.